Hello, my friends. I'm going to speak a little bit about the days of Noah, the days of Lot again. And I believe I've spoken about it before, what I was given to understand it quite a while ago. But as you know, if you walk with the Lord and you get older and your understanding gets greater and more revelation come to you, you begin to find out more and more things about why God specifically will say something in comparison to something else. Now, here is our days. We know what we're living in. We know what we've even watched change in the world over the last 10 years. And I know what I listen and see reported every single day now. Everything is about nuclear war, World War III coming into the world. There's just articles everywhere. It's all over YouTube. It's all over the news. It's all over everything. Everybody in the whole world is saying nuclear war is coming. World War III is coming. And they're not wrong with that. But where it begins to form into a trap for the world and those who claim to follow God who don't know Him, is they're walking down this path day in, day out. It's reported on day in, day out. You can't escape seeing it everywhere. So you eventually become numb to that understanding that, hey, this is real. This is going to happen. You make yourself numb into believing, you know what? It's not really going to happen. It's going to be the same tomorrow as it was today. Nothing's going to happen. Look, we've been through this for 2 years, for 3 years, for 5 years. Everybody says it's this. Everybody says it's coming, and it's not. It's not coming. I don't think we're ever going to have nuclear war. And then you start going the opposite side of that, where people had a certain sense of preparedness at one point in time, but they lose that preparedness. And this has happened in the body of the church also, or at least the entity that calls itself a church with the spirit of Antichrist behind it. There was a time when it was prepared, and it was preparing others to meet the Lord, whether through by death or the Lord's return. For 2,000 years, the church operated like that, going in and out of apostasy at different times, going in and out of all kind of different things throughout that series, as it was just like Israel. Israel constantly was falling into troubles and worshiping multiple gods. Same exact thing happened to the church, but there were good qualities about it and bad qualities about it. And then there was a time when it was preparing and busy preparing others for things of God. And that time has then since gone away, because it's the same thing happening within this entity that is happening within the world in relation to World War III and nuclear war. The world is saying, you know what? Last year it seemed like we were definitely going to nuclear war. It didn't happen. We're still here. So they begin to talk themselves into that trap. And they say, why, or this is just an article that I picked out, why there will be no nuclear war. And I was just reading through some comments yesterday on some videos about people saying there's not going to be any nuclear war. It's never going to come. It's never actually going to happen. They're not going to do it. And I'm beginning to see that transition from a point of being prepared for it, or at least have some level of concern or thoughts about it, to now they've begun rejecting it, saying it's not really going to come. It's not really going to come. The same thing has happened with the coming of the Lord, because people started talking about that years ago. Jesus Christ is coming imminently. He's coming now. He's coming now. Myself included on that, as at the time I was nothing but a young child trying to figure it out, trying to understand the Spirit. So that happens, and over time the trap gets sprung, because you're constantly talking about the coming, but then the coming doesn't happen. The same as you're constantly talking about the nuclear war, but the war doesn't happen until one day it finally does. And it happens in a day that you're no longer prepared for, because you fell into the trap of believing tomorrow is going to be the same as yesterday. And I see that now happening everywhere. And what was that? That was the days of Noah. He's the only one out there building this gigantic boat, this ark. He's the only one doing it, and he's preaching repentance. Hey, repent. There's a flood coming. He's preaching this the whole time he's doing it. And he's saying it for so long as he's building this boat that people just say, you know what? Those who might have been alarmed in the beginning, hey, why is this crazy man out here building this boat? We better listen to him. He's on to something. He knows something. After a while, people are like, he's just that nutty old kooky man building a boat. It's not going to rain. It hasn't rained didn't rain yesterday, didn't rain for 100 years. It ain't going to rain tomorrow. And then the rain came. And that same trap I see being sprung on the world. In a twinkling of an eye, the atoms splitting, the rapture of the church, the coming of the Lord, or the rapture of the bride. I will say not even the church, because this church that calls themselves a church is not really a church. They're Lot's wife, which is bringing me to my second point of why Jesus refers to the days of Lot's wife. And even very specifically in the scriptures, he says, remember Lot's wife. Why is he specifically bringing that? Well, if you go to Noah and you understand the trap that was laid for the inhabitants of the world during the days of Noah, where everybody was talking about the flood that was coming, kept not happening until one day it finally did, and by the time that it did happen, nobody was prepared for it anymore. Same thing that's happening in this day with the nuclear war and with the coming of the Lord. It's happening exactly the same way, the days of Noah, now the days of Lot. And remember Lot's wife. We have New Jerusalem, which is coming down from heaven. That is the ark, because that is the Father's house. That is where the Lord is. The Lord brings his signs with him. New Jerusalem is in heaven and it comes down. And I tell you that I put a video out a couple months ago of this rotating blue ball, entity, star, something in the sky. It was just kind of going around the sky at night, and I've seen it multiple times. I called it the disco ball. And then I seen videos the next day and the day after that. People were recording this thing in Arizona. People were recording it in Barcelona. I saw a video of this thing. And it's the same thing that I had just recorded above my house in Pennsylvania the day before that. We have, if you go to more traditional peoples in the world. You take the Hopi Indians, for instance. They always spoke about the blue Kachina, the coming of the great white man, the great white hope, which is this God that's coming back to rescue people. And it's not the color of skin white, it's their representation of whatever that God was. We have to understand that the Israelites had the direct communication line to God, but there has always been a world separate from Israel. So God's works in Israel led to all other kind of things in the world where people would look upon those things that were happening and they would bring their own understanding into it, or maybe even their own gods, because there are many gods in the world. There is just one Lord, there is just one creator, one supreme being, but there are many different gods, lowercase g's. We know them as angels. So they have the prophecy of this great Kachina star, this great blue star that comes down and collides with earth. And then you look at the scriptures and you see what New Jerusalem does. It comes down from heaven to the earth, just like a falling star. And this blue thing that I recorded, it's amazing because we marvel after signs that are happening in the world, but we look up at the skies and we're numb to it because of all the satellites that they launch up there, all the airplanes we see every day, all the drones. We have no idea what these things even are in our skies anymore. As 2,000 years ago, if somebody would have saw what I took a video of on my phone and what all those other videos came from, of this rotating blue object that when you look at it, it looks like a face of a man or a face of an eagle. When you look at that thing, people then would have understood, hey, that's something right there. That's really special. But we look at it, we don't even care. It's just another thing in the skies with all these UFOs and everything else that's out there. We look at those things and we don't even care about it because that's also part of the trap. It's part of the days of Noah. It's part of the days of Lot. We're numb to things like that when we should be ecstatic. Look, there's New Jerusalem. I've been telling you all about it. Now here's a video of it. I see it. Other people have seen it. It's coming down from heaven when it's ready to come down. It's coming down adorned like a bride. But we get numb to these kinds of things because, again, of all of the waiting that occurs between points A and B and all of the things that happen in the world between points A and B. So We have Lot's wife, who spends her last moment looking back, and she's turned into a pillar of salt. Jesus says to look up as he comes down from heaven to earth. I'm looking up, I see this thing, I think it's New Jerusalem, I should marvel and wonder over that, and I do. I'm looking up and I see that, and I understand that if I'm asking the Lord for a sign, or I'm asking the Lord for something that I can physically grab onto just because I'm in the flesh and the flesh is weak, he's even given me that, and I've blown it off. Because that is a trap on all flesh. We don't recognize things such as that and their importance after we've been made numb to it. So we're looking up. I see this thing that I believe is New Jerusalem, while all these other ones are looking back into the traditions of the world, the feast days, the calendar dates, physical Israel, the Jews. All these different things is what the church spends their time focusing on looking at, and they're missing New Jerusalem, which is up in the skies for them to see. They're looking back at all of the old things of the world and marveling after them, things that are dead, rather than looking up to something that is living and coming down to receive us. So you have the days of Lot, remember Lot's wife, happening exactly as it did then. You have the days of Noah happening exactly as it did then amongst the people, and only growing more towards the size of the trap every single day, and nobody recognizes it. This is how the Lord is able to come as a thief and come at a time unexpected, where he cuts them off and puts them where there's weeping and gnashing of the teeth outside of the gates, because they've grown numb to all of these things happening, because they're not prepared for it. They're spending all their time looking back rather than looking up, and they're trying to use their own human intellect to solve these wonders of God rather than just believe the Spirit. And this is where they all fall. And this is why I make this, to show you that out there in the world, we just had another nuclear test of an ICBM missile yesterday. They test U.S. military launches ICBM in display of nuclear forces readiness after Russia had already declared the Sarmat missile to be put into military operation. The world is ready to go into its nuclear war. It is coming. It's going to come. And you know that they're readying that. But for the people who have fallen asleep because there's been so much talk about it happening and everybody's reporting on it, yet it hasn't happened, tomorrow will be the same as yesterday, they will fulfill the prophecy just exactly as Jesus said of these days, just as the days of Noah. God bless.